Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 129 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, I am psyched about the guest that we have on today, the Minick Law. Stephanie Heller is on the podcast. Stephanie has been my right-hand woman, if you want to call it that, at the office. She's my supporting legal assistant. We have taken on the term case manager, but she has been crushing it at the office for us for many years, and has done such a good job helping us to innovate our systems, processes, crushing the way that we go back and forth between a lawyer and a paralegal as a firm, not just individually with the attorneys that she primarily supports. We affectionately call her the Minick Law because we understand at the office who is in charge. You know, as a team, we get the people at the office that are really running the show, and Stephanie is that person. Sometimes people have asked me in the past, you know, what would you do? What could your competitors do, or what could somebody do that would put you out of business? And you know, maybe in my mind, I would say, well, nothing. You know, I would, you know, I could work out of a shack. I would build back up if things went, you know, crumbling to the ground. I would figure out a way to start things over and keep clawing and scratching. And that's true to some extent. But if you wanted to put a major dent in the Minick Law organization, stealing Stephanie, you know, if Stephanie were to move to the beach and as she often jokes that she's going to someday, if that happened, there would be some major friction felt on that front. So very excited to have a conversation with Stephanie today. And this episode is going to be extremely helpful for anybody at your law practice. If you are an attorney that wants to better understand how to interact with your legal assistant, paralegal. If you are a legal assistant or paralegal that wants to better understand how to interact with your attorney. If you are an attorney considering hiring a legal assistant, or feel like you are underwater, overwhelmed, and need to start thinking about bringing on some help, this episode is a great listen for anybody that falls under that. So if you have legal assistants at your office, if you have associate attorneys at your office, encourage them to listen to this episode, because I think the advice that Stephanie shares is really going to be helpful in terms of improving relationship between legal assistant and attorney, and ultimately how that helps with the client. Stephanie lives here in Swannanoa with her husband and 3 children. She has been an incredible player on the team. She's a North Carolina certified paralegal. She got her degree from South College in paralegal studies. She's got that kind of legal and student mindset background, but she's just an incredible person, and somebody that I feel extremely blessed to have gotten to work with here at the office. So I am excited to kick it off and let you all soak in this info. So I have just made a giant mistake by not recording an epic conversation that Stephanie and I just had about how to have a great attorney paralegal relationship. We had an amazing conversation, and I forgot to hit the record button. So we're going to try and replicate this conversation. So Stephanie, the people that you have to work with just need help sometimes. You know, this is
Why I'm here.
part of a paralegal's struggles is dealing with somebody that just cannot get the job done sometimes. So I'm excited. I'm excited to have this conversation now for the second time. I'm pumped. That was such a great conversation. So we are definitely going to try to do a similar deep dive onto this. So just kind of jumping right into it. In terms of having a really solid attorney legal assistant relationship, what habits do you think are critical for great representation for a client, for great joint work on a case?
I think communication is a big one with your staff and your attorneys, and
yes,
meeting in advance on cases is super important. It's to get stuff ready for court. It's not just you that is getting the stuff ready for court. It's your client that is getting ready for court. And I can promise you they're not going to be happy if you're calling them the night before and telling them that they have to get interlock installed the next day. So it's super important. We try to meet 2 weeks ahead of time. Of course, it doesn't always happen, but it's great to do that. Anytime that you can meet in advance and just be prepared. I know not everybody's prepared, and I know that trials happen and things happen, but just communication is probably the best one.
Yeah, I think that is the communication is critical, because the more effective the communication going on between attorney and legal assistant, the better the communication is going to be between the firm and the client. So that, I mean, you know, having that knowledge of the case is so important. And I think one thing that's allowed us to have great communication about cases is kind of being on a electronic filing system. You know, there's more of access to what's going on in the case, paperwork that's coming in, instead of having to kind of run around looking for paperwork or find a file. You know, we're kind of operating on the same basis. And when that doesn't happen, when you're not operating on the same basis, or when, you know, one person, you know, is the only one that has access to a file, or is forgetting to put that into the kind of file management system, that creates a problem, because now there's kind of a breakdown in that communication between each other. The other thing that I think is, you know, also important is that kind of meeting far out. And something that I've been pretty terrible about in the past, personally, Blake and Amy are much better about that than I am. So the other two attorneys that you're helping currently are much more prepared than I am. But I think that is such a important piece. And again, for, you know, DWI and traffic and those type of things, you know, these can seem like somewhat small matters in the courtroom, but you do have to give some lead time to allow for communication to the client, to get the right documentation. And so having that, you know, kind of planned, regularly scheduled meeting to discuss cases has been so helpful for us to better represent the client, so that they have what they need ready to go on the court date.
Yeah, absolutely. And for somebody that hasn't been around the whole time, you know, if you're new, I was new once, and the calendar for an attorney is extremely important to put when you are going to be in the office, when you're not going to be in the office. If you are new and you don't feel comfortable just walking right into an attorney's office like I do at this point, you can put on the calendar, I need your time, you know, block off 30 minutes. I need you to sign stuff. I need you to meet with me. I have questions, and prioritize what is more important over the next, so that if you can't meet for those 30 minutes, you only get 10, you have the most important stuff out of the way.
Yeah, I think for attorneys, one of our issues is procrastination. We're just notorious procrastinators. And I think a great legal assistant is somebody that's kind of cutting that off, or kind of staying ahead of that, kind of keeping things on schedule and pushing the envelope. So, that's something that you have done, incredibly well. And I think does require a real relationship to feel comfortable pushing an attorney to get something done that really does need to get done by a specific deadline. I think if it's kind of a top-down hierarchy where, basically attorney is giving orders and paralegal is following orders, then the procrastination doesn't get fixed. The procrastination doesn't get dealt with. Whereas if it's kind of a reverse hierarchy, where it's kind of like the case manager paralegal is communicating back and forth primarily with the client and saying, okay, we're going to need these things to be ready to go. Now that person can kind of push the attorney and say, hey, this is something that is going to be necessary. I need to know what information that I need to request from the client for their upcoming court date so that I can make sure they have enough lead time to get that into me or request whatever they need from their employer, whatever that back and forth might be. But I think an invitation by attorneys to have their legal assistant or paralegal act as a cutting off to their procrastination can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and I think having a personal relationship with your paralegal rather than just a professional one is extremely important. It reverses that hierarchy too. And you're on, if you feel like you're on the same level as your attorney, you're going to be more comfortable around them to walk into their office or tell them, I need some of your time. I need to have you sign these things. I'm kind of drowning. I need you to help me, get this stuff in court, or this client just keeps calling and I need some answers, or, something. I think a personal relationship is so important with your attorney over a professional relationship, because you have.
And how do you build that? How do you build that kind of personal relationship?
It goes back to communication. I think that, everything is based on communication. It is just, we do this for our families. We have families at home, whether you have a partner and kids, or you have animals, or you have, parents, you have families wherever it is. And we work here to provide for our families. Our families are number one. And I think that by communicating that to each other and getting to know your team's families, I think that it makes you more personal and you're not just machines. And, if you're having some personal stuff go on and you're making mistakes at work, I think it is extremely important to communicate that and let them know, hey, I have this going on and I need some help,
Yeah, totally agree. And, that's something that we've kind of always said as a group, is that there's more important stuff going on for each of us outside of the office than inside. And that doesn't mean that we don't take our work serious and that we don't want to do a great job, provide a wow experience to our clients. We absolutely do. That's what brings us into the office every day. But we're realistic about the fact that we each do have more important priorities going on outside of work. And I think it's really important for every lawyer, every small business owner, every law owner, to keep that front and center in your mind, that everybody that you're bringing on to the team, they do have more important priorities going on outside of the office. They're not going to and should not care, as much about the business as you have to. That they should not do that. And so the expectation, if there is any, that why is somebody not got that same mindset, is just a silly starting point. The best starting point is one from which everybody is saying, we've got a lot of amazing things that we want to be working on and kind of growing in our personal lives, and our office space is one place where we can kind of grow together as a team, but is also primarily to help us in our personal lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as, we don't want to admit it because we don't want to lose anybody that works at our firm, we're replaceable at work. We're not replaceable at home. And we just had to replace some people here because they went back to school, and it was heartbreaking. So, we don't want to replace anybody here, but we're not replaceable at home.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think recognizing that really does kind of open the door to having a great relationship, because as soon as you can kind of recognize that everybody's personal lives do carry that priority and invite conversations about those personal lives into the office and into the communication. I think, one thing that you had mentioned earlier was that, when you've got a light week coming up, you've got, judges conference coming up. And so in this kind of prep meeting for cases a couple of weeks out, it's like, well, we're not going to have anything, going on that week. Instead of just saying, okay, we don't need to have this meeting, that's an opportunity to spend some time and talk with, talk with the attorney, talk with your legal assistant about how their personal life is going, and what's going on in your family. Is there anything causing you stress right now? Those type of conversations, and having that investment in one another's lives does open the door for more easy conversations in the workspace as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We as a team, when we have these team outings and stuff like that, all of our families are involved. And I think that is amazing. I know that my family loves coming to these things, and other people, we have this Google chat, and yesterday we wished one of our attorney's sons a happy birthday. We share pictures of our kids, and we're just so involved in each other's families' lives too. And I think it's just amazing.
Yeah. I think that this work-life balance myth that is out there, in terms of, you've got to like have this juggling act going on. It is a juggling act, but it's kind of more of just, these two things are somewhat wrapped up into each other. It's kind of, that they're mutually supporting. When things are going better at work, generally things are going to be going better at home. When things are going better at home, things are generally going to be going better at work. And so they're kind of mutually supportive, or can be mutually destructive if one thing is not going well. And so just trying to kind of be invested in one another, and have those type of, again, conversations about the most important things in our lives, that allows, I think, for more of an opportunity to be able to come in and have an honest conversation about something that's going on in a case, or to knock on the door and be like, I really, this client has called 3 or 4 times. We really need to kind of get them an answer back on this, as opposed to having kind of more of a, I just don't really want to bother this person right now with this, that they seem really busy. You have more of an opportunity to interrupt, or to kind of, make a pull on the attorney or the paralegal's time.
Yeah, you feel more comfortable nudging them and getting that answer.
So to shift gears a little bit for a minute, one of the things that I think is a real problem for lawyers when they bring on a legal assistant is, that they do it kind of in a problematic way. And that is that, they do it generally when they're swamped, right? This is for most people that are looking at hiring a legal assistant. There is a lot of fear and trembling that is done going into that, because generally when you are kind of like first stepping into that stage, you may not have a lot of kind of cash flow. There may not be a lot of extra funds lying around to kind of bring in another person, and so this may be a financially difficult move on your end. It may be something where you don't want to potentially put another person's family life at risk by hiring them and then telling them 3 months later, hey, sorry, we're not getting the call volume that I was expecting, and so I'm going to have to let you go. You shouldn't have quit your job that you did 3 months ago to come on board with me. You don't want to have those conversations. So I think, there's a lot of fear that goes into this hiring process. But I think a lot of attorneys go into it with this mindset of, well, I shouldn't bring somebody in because either, I don't have the time to train them and get them up to speed, or B, the tasks that I'm doing are not teachable. So I'm just going to kind of stay in this grind and kind of keep doing it. I don't want to risk, again, the financial stress of bringing somebody else aboard, or putting them in possible jeopardy. And I'm not going to be able to teach these things, or I just don't have the time to teach. So in terms of onboarding a legal assistant, what are some effective things that you could, you think would be helpful for an attorney to hear about bringing somebody aboard to help them at the office?
I think watching and learning is a big one. Letting that legal assistant watch you answer the phone, listen to you, talk to somebody. It's going to be different than, them talking to a client, but they can still pick up on that. Courtroom time is such a big one. Courthouse time, letting them follow you around that courthouse so that they can tell the client where they're going is such a big thing. Especially this Buncombe County courthouse, it is a maze. Going over there to tell somebody where to go is so much easier than just trying to, be like, sorry, I haven't been over there. Relating with someone is so much better, and getting that courtroom time, even down to paper clipping the papers the right way that the judge wants to sign them. I recently asked how to put limited driving privileges together that would better help the judge sign them. How does he want to flip through them, so that it's easier on the judge, so that it looks better on our attorneys, and then it's just easier on everybody. So it's the watching and learning is so much better than probably any training manual you can give them.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point, and it is so valuable to have that. I think for most lawyers, there is no training manual. There's no procedure. We were laughing a few minutes ago because when I brought Henry in, it was all trial by fire. And so we're like the next 15 employees that came through the door. It was just basically, there's no onboarding process. There's no training manuals. There's no explanation of this is how we do things. It's basically come in the door and, start doing it, like, get going. And I think because so many attorneys, wait because of that financial stress of having somebody on payroll that brings, they wait for so long to bring somebody aboard that there is such a need to have an assistant that when they get somebody, they need them to almost like go to work immediately. It's like, I'm already behind in cases. I'm already behind in calls. So I need you to just start helping me pick up the slack right now. And instead, I mean, it's something that if you can just let them observe what it is that you're doing and basically communicate to them, through real-time example, how you want things to be done, you're going to get on the same page so much faster than if you sit down with them in your office for an hour and explain, here's what I want you to do. Just let them watch what you do. We do this, routinely now with people that come in as an attorney or as a receptionist. They're not answering phone calls day one. They sit and they watch somebody else that's been doing it for a long time and get a sense of, okay, this is what you're supposed to say in response to these type of inquiries. This is how you refer a case out. This is how you create a new intake in Clio. That all of these things are just being discovered in real time. Similarly with attorneys, that they're listening in on consultations with another lawyer before they start doing them themselves. It's all about that kind of real-time apprenticeship experience, and that hands-on is just so powerful. And the being able to see what's going on in the courthouse, that is so important, I think, for an effective relationship, because it's so hard to conceptualize what is going on in the courthouse. I think, from a a legal assistance perspective, it's like the attorney went over to court 3 hours ago for a speeding ticket. What on God's green earth is taking so long over there? Like, what is happening in that space? And when you go over and see, oh my gosh, this is like madness over here, that, no wonder this, it's where do you get a driving record? That's the process that you have to go through. I mean, it's, you see that with your own eyes, and you're like, okay, well, now I kind of understand the time pressures and, the issues in terms of getting from point A to point B. So now you're just better prepared to help the client when they need something, to, as you said, better organize documentation and paperwork. But it's something I don't think you can appreciate until you've seen it real time.
Yeah. And another thing for attorneys to remember is they're not going to find the exact replica of themselves. They're not going to find somebody that's perfect, just like, they think they are. But if they're honest with that person that they just hired and said, I have no idea what I'm doing, we're going to figure this out together, that legal assistant is going to instantly feel more comfortable and going to be able to ask questions. And if they make mistakes, feel a little bit more comfortable saying, I don't think I did this right. Can you, show me how to do this right again? It's, if they are just honest and just say, I'm lost, we're going to be lost together, let's just figure this out together. I think it's super important too.
Yeah, I think, the expectations piece of it is really important, because, the ridiculous expectation that I think some of us have when we hire somebody is, you should get up to speed on this stuff very quickly. If there's some basic task, you should get up to speed on this very quickly. But I think one thing that we forget is how high stakes all of these seemingly menial tasks are when it comes to the perspective of the legal assistant. When you're answering phone calls of somebody that's like, I just got arrested last night, and it all seems very black and white and easy to somebody that's been doing it forever. It's a pretty, high stakes call that seems to be coming in to somebody that is looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. So having that patience in terms of the time that it's going to take to get onboarded, to get up to speed on these things, is just, it's necessary. It's realistic to have, a better expectation that this is going to take some time, for us to get on the same page, for this new person working at the office to understand what types of cases that we have, to understand the client profile that we kind of regularly see, to understand, how our referral system works, so that if we can't handle this, this is how, this gets to the next person. All that stuff just takes an immense amount of time. And two things that you pointed out prior to the call that I think are so helpful in terms of that initial conversation between, new hire and an attorney are, if you don't have a system for training, if you've never had an employee before, being honest about that and just saying, I literally don't know what the heck I'm doing. I am swamped. I am, I need help. But in terms of, training you to do the role of legal assistant, which could mean a billion different tasks. Like, I mean, the legal assistant doesn't really mean anything. It's basically like, what garbage needs to get cleaned up in this place? that's the ultimate question is, what am I going to be doing? But the being honest about that and just saying, I don't know what I'm doing in terms of training. And then secondly, making it very clear, hey, if there is a mistake that is made, we're both going to make mistakes. We're human. We're going to make mistakes on cases. We're going to make mistakes in terms of communication. If a mistake is made, the only thing I ask is that we talk about it, right? Like that. Let's bring this out, because mistakes have a tendency to snowball, and minor issues become giant problems if they don't get addressed. And so, those two things, I think, in terms of that onboarding process, even if there's no system, there's no checklist, there's no training manual that exists, just letting them know, hey, we're gonna, I don't know what I'm doing. This is going to be trial by fire, but let's just be patient with one another. And then, hey, if there's a mistake that's made, let's talk about it and not hide it.
Yeah. Yeah. Patience, communication, and honesty. Those are the keys to success.
So in terms of kind of client or attorney paralegal relationship and anticipating what the attorney is going to need, you have like a sixth sense for anticipating, being one step ahead of everybody that you support on what they're going to need. There are times when I'll walk into the office and be like, I need you to do this. And you'll like pass me the paper, or, I'm gonna, need you to call this client and let them know I already did that. Like you have like this incredible sixth sense for being like 5 steps ahead. What is the, what is the secret sauce on that front? What's going on, Stephanie?
It's more just, being here for so long, getting to know all of the people that I've worked with. For somebody that has just come in, I would just say, ask, basically ask, what do you specifically like done that I can learn from you that you want done? There's every attorney that I have helped over these several years that I've been here, like different things. And so you just have to learn them, watch them, learn what they like. Not every case is going to be the same, but a lot of DWI cases need the same paperwork. So that is something that you just learn over time. But a lot of it is asking your attorney, what do you specifically want with this? How do you want this done? Do you want this paper clipped this way, or do you want this written this way? It's a lot of trial and error too, but it's watching and learning and asking questions.
Yeah, I think that's one reason why when you sit down with a new hire as the attorney, it's so important to communicate, I don't know what I'm doing, because I think that the person walking into the office that has been hired thinks you know what you're doing, right? Like they're like, you wouldn't have hired me unless you knew what I was going to be doing and you had a job created for me. So you must have it figured out. And when you're honest and you're like, no, I have literally no idea what I'm doing, but I know that I've got too much on my plate to handle. And I want to do a better job for our clients. So I need help. When you're honest and you put it in those terms, it invites those questions, but being maybe very specific about that fact that, hey, if you got a question about something, you don't understand, why we do something a certain way, or you don't know how to make this, draft up this particular form. You don't know how to have this type of conversation with a client, just ask and we'll talk through it. Inviting those questions and that curiosity is hugely helpful, because if you have the mindset that this person should know how to do this thing, but they've never been taught, that's silliness. And if that kind of becomes apparent to the legal assistant or receptionist or whoever is now in the office trying to help you, that they see the attorney as somebody that expects them to know what to do and they don't know, they're going to try to pretend, right? They're going to try to pretend to do it a certain way, or at least that would be kind of the easy tendency, as opposed to just saying, I don't really know how to do this thing that you've asked me to do. Can you show me? Can you explain to me what we need to get done? So I think that having, for the legal assistant, asking those questions is so important. It's okay to not know. You shouldn't know when you've never done it before. And for the attorney, inviting those questions, recognizing that this is somebody that doesn't know, has never, done these things before, and we're going to have to learn. Like we're going to have to walk through. And the more that questions are getting asked, the faster we're going to get on the same page.
Yeah. And as those questions are getting answered, it's important for the legal assistant to make themselves cheat sheets. I have a massive notebook of cheat sheets and forms that I have hand filled out so that I remember how to do them again. And, it comes with time and, you remember how to do it. But in the beginning, you have to refer to those cheat sheets. We have jokes about our walls because there's just stuff taped up everywhere so that we can just look at it and remember how to do something. But as you're getting those questions answered, so you don't have to ask the same question over and over again, you just make yourself a list and a reminder, and this is how you do this so that you don't have to, next time you can ask a different question to get an answer to.
Yeah, I think those cheat sheets are so important, regardless of whether you have two people in the office, or really one, regardless of whether you have one person in the office or 10, having a system for everything is critical. But when you get 2+, it's even more critical, because the only way to be on the same page is to have a system for doing things. So if you are the legal assistant that walks into the office where the attorney doesn't have any idea what they're doing, which was the case for, again, the definitely the first few hires that we had at this office were looking at me, and they're like, man, he really doesn't know what's going on. That it's important to use that maybe as an opportunity to start the system. One thing that is going to make it a lot easier to get on the same page, if you document the system that you're getting trained on, and then you go to the attorney and you say, hey, I think this is what we're doing. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any step. For a limited driving privilege, here are the things that looks like that we need. And kind of like a time frame for those. Am I missing anything? That I think is going to bring a lot of goodwill to you from the attorney, because they're gonna be like, man, this person is organized and kind of wants to be ahead of the game, kind of in that anticipatory a mindset. But secondly, if there is something that's missing, now you've got the opportunity to kind of tweak that a little bit and work off of something. So if your attorney doesn't have the system, which I would just go into it thinking that
they're not going to have it. Yeah.
Let's just pretend as betting people that's not going to be the case. Then being the person that pushes that. And I would say that the majority of the systems that we have in place at the office are not attorney initiated. They have grown out of other members of the team, and even the ones that primarily involve attorneys. That a lot of that has grown primarily out of the team. So I think it's a really powerful way to get on the same page is through some sort of a flow chart, diagram, checklist, whatever it might be. How do you want things done? Okay, it seems like this is the operating system. Boom, approve. Let me know if we need to change anything.
Yeah. And then the next person you hire doesn't have to go through the same pain.
Yeah, exactly.
You did, you made it a little bit easier for them and for you and for your attorney. So
yeah, exactly. That onboarding process of the next person. And that's why, from the attorney's perspective, it's also, if you don't have time to create the onboarding process, that is a great task for new hires. Hey, as we kind of are walking through these steps, and this is something I really wish I would have done earlier in practice, as we're walking through these steps, what is our system for requesting a motion to continue? What is our system if we get a call about a new case that we can't handle? How are we helping the client find somebody that can? What is our system of intake? What is our system for following up with a client after the court date? The more that you can use, forms, checklists, flow charts to diagram all of these different pieces that are getting repeated. If you have to do a task twice, there should be a system to it, and you can put that on your legal assistant, because if there is no system in place, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, they can make that system in place now.
The in terms of kind of major pitfalls to avoid, both in terms of attorney and in terms of legal assistant, we'll start on the attorney end of things. What are some mistakes that attorneys who are supervising a paralegal or a legal assistant, what are some mistakes that attorneys can avoid?
I think thinking that I mean, we can anticipate everything, but we can't anticipate a lot. We can't anticipate everything. And I think that that is a big pitfall for attorneys, is that they do think we can anticipate everything. And I mean, we are superheroes, but we have some downfalls too. So communication is a big one. I'm always going to come back to communication with everything. I think that it is so important between an attorney and a paralegal to communicate. If you're just down to anything, if you're not going to be in the office, if you are going to be out for the rest of the day, we need to know so that we can tell somebody you're not going to call them back, or, because then that person's not going to be happy. We're going to hear about it. It's just not going to be a good thing. And then, how you're communicating too. If you're communicating in a tone that is just angry all the time, that shuts us down a little bit, and it doesn't make us feel comfortable. It ruins that personal relationship, which is going to affect that professional relationship. So communication and tone is a big one.
Yeah, I think that the communication piece is critical because of the fact that it really does impact how the firm appears public facing to the client. If there's not good communication going on between the attorney and the paralegal, then that is going to trickle down into the communications to the client. So if I don't know where the attorney is and client calls and says, what time is attorney going to show up? Or, you've got on your calendar, Jones case, scheduled from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock as the attorney. You as the attorney know that case is going to trial, but your legal assistant, paralegal, doesn't know that case is going to trial, and then schedules 2 or 3 afternoon consultations for you. You're in trial all afternoon. Those people aren't getting called back. They're miffed. They're going to call somebody else, and you've lost 3 potential new cases. And that is not the fault of the client. That's not the fault of the legal assistant. That's the attorney's fault for not communicating their schedule. So I think that being very clear about where you are going to be is a major pitfall in that attorney-client relationship, a major cause of friction of not being on the same page. So getting on a shared calendar that is meaningful. If you've got to take your child to the doctor, if you've got a parent-teacher conference, if you've got a soccer game or whatever it might be, as the attorney, you need to put that on there so that your legal assistant will know, this is something going on, and vice versa. It's helpful to both ways to kind of be very upfront about those type of, personal scheduling items, in addition to being very, very clear about what your calendar looks like. And this is something where I've really not been good about this in the past in terms of scheduling, whether it's work commitments or personal commitments, really being good at getting those things on the calendar. And it can really cause a issue in terms of how those communications are moving down the chain to the client. So I think it's really a important thing to, first of all, not cause friction with your legal assistant, but secondly, again, in terms of the client's viewpoint of that, is going to be a huge difference. The other thing is really the kind of second point that you brought up, talking down to, or being, not being kind with your legal assistant is just, really unacceptable. I mean, there's just no other way to kind of put it. Then it's just not an acceptable thing. Nobody in your life should be your punching bag. I mean, that goes, whether it's your own family, somebody at work, a client, that punching bags are it's not acceptable. And, I think that when you kind of have any type of friction in the relationship that is based on kind of poor communication, kind of, whether it's being, we can call it blunt. I think bluntness is okay, but rudeness is a problem. And, I think that if you are a blunt person, then you got to be very careful that this doesn't come across as being rude. So even if bluntness is okay, if you've got somebody on the other side that's trying to interpret what you're saying, in an email or text communication, that's got to be something that you get very mindful and careful about, because it really can cause a breakdown in the relationship. And just like the relationship between attorney and client is so important. It's a relationship that is built on trust. Same thing, but really at a higher level between legal assistant and attorney. Everything is built on trust. If I'm fearful that I'm going to get yelled at or told that I'm making this massive mistake or whatever it might be, that's going to cause problems down the road. I mean, it just automatically is going to cause problems down the road. And you got to have that team spirit going into the client representation. If there is a break in the relationship between the attorney and the legal assistant, the client is going to suffer from that. There's no way around. It's absolutely going to come out on the client's end.
Yeah, absolutely. And blunt is okay. You just said that blunt is great. We like blunt because you get to the point, you tell us what you need, but rudeness is not. And especially if you have an overthinker paralegal, because I'm a big overthinker. So if you say something the wrong way, I'm going to definitely overthink it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that kind of radical candor mindset of kindness and honesty, right? Those two things going together. We're not about hiding stuff or lying stuff or sugarcoating things when we don't need to. Making sure that we are addressing mistakes, addressing failures, fixing things that need to get fixed, providing a better experience, being honest about where we have fallen short, but at the same time delivering that message with kindness, I think is just huge. And so, again, if you've got somebody that is coming into the office, I do think that it's important to just kind of have that mindset or knowledge going in terms of how is it that I communicate with people. What are going to be maybe my own personal pitfalls in terms of where communication could break down. As the legal assistant, I think that on the flip side of that communication piece, if you're not getting the information that you need, so you are getting phone calls in, you're telling the client, attorney is in court this morning, but he'll call you back this afternoon. Attorney is in trial in the afternoon, and this happens again and again. The calendar is not matching up with the actual schedule. Then put it on yourself to have a conversation with the attorney. And this may feel like a difficult conversation, but you can just say, we had this client that called in about a potential charge that they had. I let them know that you'd be calling back this afternoon. Sounds like your case went long in court and you had a trial going on. Is there a way that we can adjust the calendar moving forward so that we make sure that we capture that client? Because I want to make sure that if we're getting a new call in, we're not, that they're not calling somebody else because you've got trial going on. If you got a trial going on, they're going to want to hear that. They want to know that you're in court. We like an attorney that's in the courtroom, but we want to make sure that we're also being accurate about when we're telling people that we're going to call them back.
Yeah, and it is going to be a hard conversation to have, especially if you're new and working with them. But just being honest with them, because that legal assistant is getting the bluntness from the client that's calling. It takes a toll on them answering phones and getting kind of hit on that end. So it is going to be a hard conversation, but it's a necessary conversation.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important from an attorney's perspective is that you need to do everything that you possibly can to not make your paralegal a liar. That you need to make everything that you do, everything that you possibly can do, and make adjustments if it doesn't seem to be working out. Because if in that scenario, the paralegal gets on the phone and says, yep, attorney will call you back this afternoon at 3:00. And then that call back doesn't happen because the attorney's in court or had something else scheduled, or forgets to make the call back, whatever it might be. It is now the paralegal that is the one, from the client's perspective, that has lied to them. You told me that the client was going to call me back. And even though it's not the paralegal's failure that the callback didn't happen, they're the ones responsible for that. So, if that's been, it's really important from the attorney's side of things, when you're supposed to do something, to do it. And if you've got a scheduling problem, communicate that to the paralegal, and then they can come back and say, actually, I didn't realize, Mr. Jones has got a trial in court this afternoon. He's not going to be able to call you back until tomorrow. Is that going to be okay? That's a totally different perception from the client in terms of rescheduling than if they just basically are sitting around at 3:00. They've, stepped out from work or whatever it might be to answer this phone call that never comes. It's like, okay, if this person isn't holding up their end of the bargain before I've paid them to do anything, they're not going to hold up their end of the bargain once I've paid them to do something. Right. So it's really an important thing. And then again, from the paralegal's side of things, if you're, again, noticing that from the attorney, just being able to kind of have that difficult conversation and just say, I want to make sure that I'm accurately communicating to the client what the expectations should be, so that we are staying above those expectations and not only meeting, but exceeding those expectations, as opposed to not delivering on our promises.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
On the flip side of things, when it comes to pitfalls that a legal assistant can avoid, what do you think? What do you think are kind of some of the major pitfalls for anybody in that role?
Well, if you have gone to paralegal school and have a degree, it's embedded in your brain, but don't give legal advice. You may know the answer. You are going to know what the attorney is going to say, but you just can't do it. You can pass on the message, but you can just not give the legal advice, as hard as that is going to be. But the other one is covering up mistakes. I think we mentioned this earlier, but it is extremely important to just be honest if you made a mistake and say, I made this mistake, I fixed it, or I made this mistake and I need help fixing it. If you keep covering it up, it's going to snowball. It's going to be worse. And it could mess up, if you forgot a court date, and it could result in a warrant for somebody's arrest or something else, equally as terrible. But it is important to be honest about those mistakes so that they don't just snowball out of control.
Yeah, I think that education piece is so important. From my perspective, one of the great values that we have as a firm is top to bottom, if you want to call it that. I mean, I think we're really all operating on the same level, all operating as a team, but everybody in the organization is working to improve their knowledge of the law. We're all kind of talking about, how limited driving privileges work, expunctions, these issues when it comes to a DWI case or somebody's driving record or points that might go on their license. Having these conversations, again, not so that every person in the firm can give legal advice, but so that everybody in the firm has an understanding of what is best going to be able to help the client. And the more that you understand the process in the courtroom, the more that you understand what pieces of evidence are important and what things need to get brought out at a sentencing hearing are important, the more you're going to be able to help the attorney that's in the courtroom prepare for those moments as the legal assistant. So I think that education piece is so powerful. I think it's just something that is incredibly powerful. from a person that is kind of in legal assistant or paralegal role, what other advice would you offer in terms of anything that else that they can be doing to improve their understanding of the law, or help the firm? What other advice do you have on that end, Stephanie?
I think CLEs are always a good option if you can find one that is in your legal field. Those are always a good option. Some firms cover the prices of those if you want to continue your legal education. Also, making your own relationships within the legal field too, not just based on your attorney's relationships, but your own. Joining a paralegal group, or getting to know other attorneys and paralegals in the legal field. So if you had a question about expunction, you could reach out, or wanted to know something about a limited driving privilege, or just anything. If you wanted to go learn about sobriety court and sit through it, you could reach out to somebody over there and go learn about it. I think that it's just really important to have those relationships, whether it be if you're in a paralegal group or you just go meet new attorneys or legal assistants.
Yeah, I think that one place that a lot of firms kind of undervalue networking is with their legal support team. In our own experience, I mean, in your involvement in the Asheville Paralegal Association, in your involvement with local legal assistants and support staff at a lot of other firms in the Asheville area, that is so important in terms of our networking and kind of growing our referral base. At the end of the day, most of the phone calls that are coming into a firm that is greater than one attorney are getting answered by a legal assistant, getting answered by a receptionist, and getting referred out. You typically, if you have a receptionist or a legal assistant, they're not sending you every phone call so that you can make the referral. That is going through the legal assistant. And so maybe they're asking the attorney, hey, who can we make these recommendations to go see? But through their own network, they also are going to have the ability to build up, hey, this is, somebody that I know handles these type of cases. This is a firm that handles DWI and criminal defense. And so, when you're going straight to the source when you're going through that kind of paralegal networking versus at the attorney level. So I think that there is a ton of lost value by kind of not encouraging, if you got somebody on your staff, whether they're a certified paralegal or a legal assistant, if there is a local paralegal association that they can join, encourage them to do that. Encourage them to be active members in that association, because it's really, I mean, it's such a powerful thing for the firm. It allows you to get out there. It allows for your legal assistant to get more and more information about other types of practice areas, and to have a better understanding of legal issues that your client might be facing outside of whatever practice area you do. So it's just such a powerful thing. And education to us with our core value student mindset is just, very, very, very important for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We offer it for everybody here. You don't even have to be certified paralegal. You could, if our receptionist wanted it, they could go take CLEs on anything that they wanted. So
yeah, education is critical. In terms of bringing on a legal assistant, a receptionist, a paralegal, from a hiring standpoint, what pitfalls, if any, or what advice would you offer in terms of that hiring process?
I would just tell them to ask questions. It's gonna be hard, but I would tell them to ask questions constantly. If you don't feel comfortable doing something, tell them you don't feel comfortable doing something. But questions are going to be the biggest way that you learn and you stay away from making mistakes.
Yeah, one thing that you had, excuse me, one thing that you had mentioned in terms of kind of bringing somebody onto the team is, kind of hiring based on values versus based on experience. Talk about that if you don't mind for just a couple minutes, Stephanie.
Yeah, our mission here is helping good people in their darkest hour. And when I interview people for receptionist or legal assistants, and the same you do that for attorneys, we say that's one of the first things we say is our mission. And I instantly watch how somebody is going to react to that. And you can tell if they're going to live that motto or if they're just going to say, oh, okay, cool, and just keep going. And we want somebody here that lives that. And so we hire based off of that. We talked earlier about how the resume, I mean, it's good to have, but we really want the experience that you're living. I love hiring receptionists from restaurants because they've had that customer-based experience. And, if you've had family members that have been through a DWI or a speeding ticket or anything that is involved with what we do here, it helps because they want to learn the legal system and they want to learn what we do and they want to help people. And so I love watching people when we tell people that because it really tells me how they're going to be and if they will fit in with our group.
Totally agree. I think one thing, and this is true, whether you're bringing on an associate attorney, whether you're bringing on a paralegal, receptionist, whatever kind of part of your practice that you are trying to delegate. Again, one of the hangups that I think happens with that, I've got to delegate this thing and hire somebody to delegate it to. One of the hangups for a attorney in that hiring mindset is I'm not going to be able to teach this task to this person. They're not going to be able to do it as well as I can. And let me just say right now, that's a lie. That's not true. They will be able to do it as well and generally better. When you find the right people to take over these tasks, you will be shocked at how well things are getting done. And so I think when it comes to our hiring mindset now is that you can teach, a lot of these things. You can train somebody to do, practice a young attorney to practice in the courtroom and offer high level representation on a DWI case within a relatively short period of time. You can have somebody learn how to be an amazing support system on a case, a paralegal to be this incredible support system. You can get a person to come in and just kill it in terms of intake and answering phones if you've got them in the right value model. And whatever the prior experience is or whatever, law firm or anything else that they've worked at in the past, the primary driver for us is does this person's value system align with the core values at the firm? Hiring based on the core values and particularly on our mission is so powerful. And it's just funny to say, and I think it's so cool that you have this built into your own hiring process of watching somebody's expression when we talk about the mission. Is this a job? Are they applying for a job, or do they want to be a part of this kind of great again, but there's no other way to put it, a great mission that we kind of see ourselves as being a part of and really deliver something to clients that is exceptional. If you're on board with the mission, we can teach you how to do the job. But if you're here to just do a job, we can't teach you to kind of feel the mission. It doesn't work the other way around.
Yeah. And usually in an interview, you can tell within the first few minutes how they're going to be, if they're going to fit in with us and with our mission and our core values.
And I think that part of that in terms of the hiring process on the attorney's end is that if you don't have those core values figured out, if you don't know kind of what makes your firm different, if you don't have, something special that you believe that you're doing in the community, it is going to be more difficult to attract the right candidates, because then all you're offering is a job. You're literally offering a paycheck. You're offering, a clock in, clock out mentality. If it's only a job, then you've got to have everything expressed in those terms. Whereas if you've got something that is mission based, then you get people excited about that. So I think that means, to some extent, before you start the hiring process, figure out your core values, because if you don't have those figured out, you really can't get the right person into the office.
Yeah, and we have a great group here, and we all really live that motto.
Yeah, and I think that part of the reason why we are, systematically, yes, maybe there are some things that we're doing better now in terms of our hiring process, but I think why we've got such an amazing group of people at the office right now is because we actually have identifiable core values, and identifiable mission and motto that kind of drives everything that we're doing. And so we have just a better sense of who we are and who's going to be a good fit with that. Whereas before we had those things, which is only, 3 years back at this point, before we had those things, again, it was, where are we overbooked? Where do we need kind of a person to come in and fill some space and time? And I mean, we still, without speaking it, lived some of those core values, but I think expressing them has made it much easier to get the right people on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could interview people and try to get their personalities and if they would fit in, but it is so much better to have those core values and see if they're really going to live those.
Totally agree. Well, I appreciate this. Has been awesome. I think this will be one of the most useful episodes that is on the podcast for everybody at a firm listening. This is I think just so helpful in terms of this dynamic and the person that is bringing you the most value in the office, your right-hand person. It's so critical to have some of this thought through. I feel like the second conversation went better than the first, Stephanie. So I'm actually glad that I'm an idiot and I forgot to start recording the first go around. But appreciate all the information. I'm going to go find something to do, and I'm going to let you get back to running their law practice.
Got it.
If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.